everybody, welcome back to Record-ology. Today is a momentous day in the history of Record-ology. Today, I get to hear my first DAC. I have heard many headphone amplifiers, I've heard many other devices, CD players, but I've never kind of separated out a transport from a DAC and listened to what a better, higher quality DAC can sound like. Does it make a difference or not? Let's find out. You're not going to want to miss this. Still smells like a new car in here from all of the sound panels we just put up. All right, folks, here's the new set. Again, it's constantly evolving. I took out the toys that were non-audio related. Everything in here is audio related for the most part. There are a few things that aren't, but it's going to constantly evolve. It's going to constantly evolve. All right, today we are looking at the SMSL D400, if I'm reading that right. Now, SMSL is a company that we're hearing quite a bit from lately. There is reviews all over the community right now of products by these guys. We reviewed some of their stuff, including their CD, one of their CD players. We're going to be looking at some more today. But this is a DAC and headphone amplifier. This is my very first DAC. I've never had a standalone DAC. Every DAC I've owned up to this point has been built into something else. So this will be a treat. Obviously, it does DAC things, and it's a headphone amplifier. So, oops. So let's go ahead and get into it. SMSL. Okay, so we've got this little thing here. So that'll be the manual and a little card here. I think I called this a credit card, just jokingly, the first time we reviewed something of theirs. It's kind of, and somebody's like, it's more like a phone card, and I would agree. Okay, we've got this foam here. We have an AC power cord. We used to call these printer power cords because they were so often associated with printers. And what do we got here? Looks like an antenna with a miniature barrel connector. And we have a USB connector. Also, what we would call a printer USB, even if that's not the correct name for it. Here is the remote control, and we'll look at that in more detail. And then the device itself. Wow, which is heavy. It's very heavy. Okay, let's see what we got here. This just feels quality. I mean, you know what I mean. When you pick something up, you can feel the inherent quality in it. That is not 100% a good way to measure the actual quality of a product. There are cheap performing products that will feel heavy, but for the most part, when you pick up something cheap, you're like, oh yeah, that's a piece of crap. But then when you pick up something hefty and you could tell the quality, like this is metal construction, it's a metal faceplate. We've got rubber feet on the bottom here. We've got a whole host of connections there. And a little peel off thing there. High-res audio wireless, it says right there. The DAC chips that I mentioned by ESS Technology, the company is headquartered in Colorado, back home. Now, they actually may be manufacturing them overseas, but it's a US-based company. And the XMOS processor, pay no attention to that. The XMOS brand processor chips is a company in the UK based in Bristol. So again, they may be physically made overseas. Well, they are overseas, one way or another. Okay, so I've plugged in the power supply to it. We do have a protective film and a tab. Pull that off. And as you can see, the display is nice and bright. This is full daylight and studio lights, and I can still see it completely clearly. If you take most CD players like this early 90s D121 from Sony, there are two main components that it has, which is everything you need to play a CD. The first being a physical mechanism to spin the disc and read the data, and another which is to convert the digital audio into analog audio that you and I can hear. In this case, through the headphone jack or line output. And most CD players are just that. In fact, By saying CD player, you are implying that it's got the built-in DAC and the transport all in one, aka CD player, which is good enough for most people. And until now, even being a fervent lover and supporter of CDs, that's all I've ever had, nor have I ever felt the need to do anything else. But this is something that takes it to a different level. This is the DAC portion of that. There's no CD drive and there's no place to put a CD in here. It is merely a DAC. You have to provide the CD player. Staying on brand, this is the SMSL CD player that we've reviewed previously. So this device plays the digital disc, extracts the digital audio, sends the digital audio over to the DAC, and the DAC decodes the digital audio into analog audio. As is typical with separates, when you separate components out, typically it does better than built-in ones. Now this isn't an ideal example. I'm going to move this aside for a second. Imagine right now a matching SMSL CD transport device that looks an awful lot like this. You might have seen it on one of my colleagues' shows, and you'll probably be seeing it in the very near future on this show. But this has a matching CD transport, and the CD transport is a CD player without the DAC. This particular one is a CD player because it has audio jacks connected right there to either your headphones or your speakers. It doesn't need a DAC. It's got a built-in one. However, it does have, as do many mid-range CD players, an optical output. So why do you need an a digital output if it's got the analog output? Because it has a built-in DAC. Because if you want to use an external DAC, this gives you the option. This will send a one-to-one pure digital bit stream out of this unit into the DAC of your choice, which for us is the SMSL headphone DAC that we're looking at here. All right, I know it's a lot of information, but hopefully you wrapped your brain around that. Basically, transport doesn't decode, just reads the disc. DAC decodes. That's essentially what we got going on here. Next, we need a lossless way to connect these two. Now, coaxial is another way to do it, but I am going to go with optical, which uses a fiber optic cable, also known as Toslink, although that's a little bit dated now. Basically, fiber optic or optical cable. It's a piece of glass, flexible, that allows light impulses to be sent down and decoded. And the light impulses are emitting the ones and zeros that are coming directly off of the disc. So we're going to plug it in there, and we're going to plug it in there. Right. You will see there's a little flap there, and we can just insert our cable like that, and it snaps into place. So I have the units stacked. I've also lowered the lights just so we can see the displays a little bit clearly. As I said before, you can see it with bright daylight, but it's going to look even better without it. I probably should have shown this when the lights were on, but here is the remote control. So it's pretty basic, just a function, select, volume, mute, and then navigation button. So I'll be using this to navigate. Also, the SMSL transport has a remote, which has pretty basic CD player / transport controls. So just know that even though you don't see my fingers on there, that's kind of what we're doing. But speaking of the physical connections here, so we do have a number of connections here, balanced, unbalanced, for the headphone amplifier, as well as a knob that adjusts accordingly. I'm going to set this back to 0 dB. Let's go ahead and power on the CD player / transport. And it is coming to life, and there's no disc in there currently. But as you can see here, it still says no signal. So I'm going to toggle through the inputs of that device. Is there any batteries in here? There's no batteries in here. I'm going to put batteries in the remote control. Now with the not included batteries, I'm going to switch inputs on the DAC. USB, Bluetooth, optical, that's ours. And it senses down here. Let me zoom in right here. Check this out. It says 44.1 kilohertz. So it knows the resolution of the transport device. So that's good. That's 44.1K. That is a CD, 16 bits, PCM. And if I continue, coaxial, AES, 12S, USB, Bluetooth. So that's those are all the inputs. Essentially, you put in a digital bit stream, and it does a very good job, supposedly, and I'm sure it will, of decoding that into luscious analog sound for your enjoyment. So I am going to test it out. Obviously, this is difficult to test out on the show other than demonstrating how it works and giving you my feedback. But I've got an idea. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a CD into this device right here. Let's see if anything happens, by the way, when it starts playing on the screen there. Let me hit play. I'm curious if there's any additional information on the screen. Nope, it's just volume control. So yeah, pretty simple actually. It's pick your input and control your volume. And there are function options on here, so I wonder what those will do. Okay, so headphone output, there is a decibel control, all line output. Okay, those are two things, headphone out and all line output. So we want headphone output, right now it's set to 0 dB, which is presumably, oh no, I was going to say, I thought that would be totally 0 to out, so it's probably going to go to 100. Yep, so mute is negative 100, and we'll go from there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take these studio monitors. These are totally flat. The difference between headphones or speakers and monitors is that they are flat. There's no EQ. There's no bias to this. So there's like a totally flat response, and that will allow me to really hear what's coming out of this device. But how are we going to know if it's any different than just listening to the CD player directly? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to this and go back and forth, plug in my headphones here, then plug in my headphones directly to the CD player. And I will tell you if I hear any intrinsic difference in how the quality of the audio is represented. By the way, that is not 3.5 and that is not 4.4. This is 1/4 inch, that's 4.4, just so you know. Okay. I spent a considerable amount of time with it, listened to all types of music, and I like it. It's really good. So I can totally understand now. Again, I'm coming into this having never had a DAC and only heard CDs through their built-in DACs. I've never heard an external one before. But now I understand. I kind of wondered, why is there really that much of a difference that, there's these whole extra devices that people want to get? Is there any reason for it? Or is it just unnecessary? But I can understand now why CD players exist, and they sound good, and I still think they do. But I also understand now why these DACs exist, because there is a noticeable upgrade with the DAC listening, because I switched the headphone jack between the two. I listen to 1/4 inch input here with an adapter, and then the 3.5 on the back of this. So I constantly went back and forth, and I have decided there's between a 7 to 9% increase in sound quality with my headphones, with the music I listen to, my personal experience. Obviously, this is all, everybody can hear things differently, and you may notice a bigger difference or a lesser difference. But for me, I did notice a noticeable difference. It was better sounding. Now, what does that mean? To me, it sounded higher resolution. And I don't know how to describe that, because to me, a CD player outputs pure crystal digital audio that sounds pristine, yet somehow it seems more pristine with this. It's kind of like you went from a good high definition signal to a 4K signal, if I were to use that analogy. Also, I felt like it unpacked the audio a little bit wider. The sound stage was noticeably wider and spread out. This felt like I was listening in like a classroom size room acoustically, and this felt like an auditorium in the best ways, not in an echoey sense, but just in a larger, more dynamic, more robust manner. And that doesn't change things. Like bass response is the same. It's just an overall sense of openness and soundstage and resolution are definitely noticeably, like 5 to 10%, I say 7 to 9% better with this. So for a little over $200, if you can afford it and you really want to chase the ideal sound, then this, by all means, do this. If not, this still is a heck of a device for beautiful, high quality digital audio. One last thing I want to throw in there. Obviously, there's a lot of functionality that this thing can do that we didn't get to in today's show. So, if you're interested in things like Bluetooth, the USB connectivity, balanced headphone connectivity, etc., then, there's more story to be had here. That being said, with what I've experienced here, I'm very, very impressed with it. I wanted to mention, too, that this thing is MQA compatible. So if you are among the lucky few to have an MQA-CD, then this will decode that. Now, what is an MQA-CD? It's a compact disc that is at both times, at the same time, a Redbook CD and an MQA compatible disc. So it's backwards compatible with a regular CD player. But if you have an MQA CD, this can actually decode MQA. And essentially, MQA is a higher resolution audio format that is folded seamlessly into a Redbook CD. So something to be aware of. If that applies to you, then be aware that this will do it. Also, I wanted to throw out there very quickly that if your CD player has an optical out, it may not be putting out a pure 1-to-1 bit stream, and you need the 1-to-1 bit stream in order to decode an MQL-CD. Again, this is a very small amount of people that this probably applies to, but some CD players, especially older ones that have the optical output, they can actually put metadata in and upscaling and things into the bit stream, which kind of alternates it just enough that it's not a pure 1-to-1 digital bit stream anymore. Wow, that cable moved on its own. That was weird. So, but this one does. This is a 1-to-1 digital bit stream output, and it works perfectly for that. All right, my friends, and that's going to do it. Yes, does make a difference. Thumbs up, links down below. I know it's a bit pricey, but to some people, that'll be nothing in the scheme of things when it comes to really going for that high fidelity sound. And again, if you're super into CDs as I am, you may be interested in chasing that next tier, sort of unlock the next segment of the map, as it were, of CD quality sound. My friends, don't forget our merch, don't forget our 45 adapters, all that good stuff, but mostly just thank you to you for being there. And that is going to do it. So happy record hunting, and we'll see you next time.